That's one of those other pro tips, is like doing chord changes over 7s and 5s is like always sick. Also doing like consecutive 3s. You're gonna see, dude, this riff's gonna be totally intergalactic. Finally ready to start using jazz harmony in your compositions. Well, the first thing you need to understand is that there's literally no such thing as jazz harmony. There's only harmony in all the levels of it. Consider humans have been using the same 12 notes since way before the term jazz was ever even thought of. It really just comes down to the style dictating the organization of those notes. So classic YouTube video intro where I literally negate the title within the first 30 seconds to make the crucial point that you can't use jazz harmony in rock because then it would just be jazz. What you can do is apply a comprehensive awareness of all harmony to any style you want and ultimately create something entirely new as a result. So that's the line of logic that I'm going to extrapolate in this video. Now, as a teacher, I see a lot of people using the term jazz to describe music that's changing keys a lot. Although jazz does change keys often, so does literally any song that's good, right? Key changing is basically like the point of composition, right? Like your ability to change keys strategically and set up different key centers in interesting, unpredictable, or predictable ways. That's the whole point of the whole freaking thing. So key changes are fundamental. Like if you don't have key changes, you don't have a whole lot. So understanding how to change keys, like the precedent of key changes going back through musical history, right? Understanding that is going to be crucial if you want to write compelling music, because you need that reference point. The reference point of precedent. Only once we understand the precedents that have already been put in place can we create new precedents, right? And that's where like systems come in that video. Get ready, it's like full stack integrated of everything. Here we go right now, because we're going to get into the workstation to illustrate the point. So the key thing to realize here is that rhythm is going to be the first principle of the whole operation. Rhythm is what's going to set the stage for the harmony, and the pro tip would just be like always start with rhythm. If you can understand why you should always start with rhythm, then you're on the right track. The harmony is just gonna move according to the rhythm. So once a rhythm is established, it's gonna be super easy to be like, oh, there's an obvious place where a key change could take place. So you already know I'm headed straight towards the rhythmic frameworks, right? And for today's video, I'm gonna use the old Special Accent Tihai framework, right? We made videos about this. This is in the school curriculum. We're not gonna get too hung up on the frameworks for today. This is a video more focused on harmony, but I'm showing you the whole process. How do you figure out harmonic movements? How do you sequence harmony? You're gonna use rhythm to guide you to do it. So we gotta start with the rhythm. Let's get into some frameworks. Good old Special Accent Tihai framework. I'm gonna rapid fire explain this, and it's gonna probably feel like you got hit by an actual train. So if you want, you can put this at like half speed. So Special Accent Tihai framework, we've got 3 cycles. 1 cycle is truncated, the other 2 cycles are the same length, but the rule is 3 cycles. That truncated cycle is embedded in the first 2 cycles, so you hear this truncated cycle 3 times, and through the precedent of Tihais, this magical effect happens where you automatically write the best thing ever, because the Tihai is a battle-tested framework that goes back innumerable amounts of time. All right, so how do we apply the good old 2 cycles plus 1 truncated cycle in the DAW? Well, already you got to make a few decisions. You got to do time signature. You could do any time signature you want. You know I like 4/4, but I'm going to monkey wrench it a little bit and go 12/8, right? And the difference there would just be that now instead of 4 subdivisions per beat, it's now going to be 3 subdivisions per beat. And I'm thinking it makes logical sense to do that over 8 measures. So then you have how many subdivisions? 96, dude. Do the math. I know the pieces fit. Like classic 8 bars of 12/8. So now it's how do you do those cycles, right? How do you do the 2 cycles the same length plus 1 truncated cycle? Well, you divide the number 96 into 3 ways, and they're not equal ways. And that's back to that like Meshuggah, like ancient fundamental truncated cycle level. Like, what is that, dude? Seriously. Like, what's up with the truncated cycle, uneven divisions? And just keep in mind, this Tihai framework is that classic thing that fits into the Meshuggah framework, but the Meshuggah framework doesn't fit into it But this Tihai thing goes back probably like, you know, millions of years minimum. So at first it seems kind of random, like, oh, 3 cycles, like what? One's not even, you know, it's like, no, it's not random. This is some deeply woven, like, cosmic principle. So 96 divided by 3, where it's not even 3. I'm gonna go with the classic 42 plus 12 equals 96. And now the other rule with the Tihai framework is that that 12 is gonna fit into each of those 42s. And specifically, it's going to be the first 12 subdivisions of each of those 42. You follow this logic here. Well, I'm going to illustrate it in the good old Midi where everyone can instantly understand it. So the idea is now we got to organize 12. Well, speaking of knowing the pieces fit, why don't we do the old 7/5? And I'm going to go with the key of E today. So when I say I'm going to do 12 as 7 and 5, I mean 7 eighth notes, right? And look, these are eighth notes here, and there's 12 of them, right? Just to show you the subdivisions, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, right? So that's my base layer subdivision, and then those are the subdivisions that I'm going to be organizing in 3s and 2s, if you remember all the 3s and 2s lessons. So that means I'm going to take 7 of these, like this. That's 7, and I'm gonna just make that the grouping, right? And then now that's 5, and I'll make that the grouping, right? So now I gotta make a decision of how I organize the 7 and 5, like deja vu, but watch how this is gonna lead to an entirely different universe altogether. So I'm not ever overthinking this. For now, I'm just gonna go 4, 3, right? And so that 4 is 2 2s, right? So I will make that, right? So you see, we got 2, 2, 3 for the first 7, and then maybe the 5 will just be 2, 3, right? And how about for the 5, we go ahead and do a 3, 2. Right, so that's our first rhythm. That 12 is key, right? So that's actually a really important 12 that we've made. And it's actually very interesting right off the bat. A 2, 2, 3, 3, 2. Pretty sick. And honestly, that may not even be a factor later, depending on how we actually play the harmony that's going to happen over this rhythm, right? Because there's a lot of ways to articulate chords in terms of grouping them, right? Sometimes you don't actually have to think about breaking a 7 or a 5 down into a 3 and a 2 because of the way that it's going to play on the guitar. I'm foreshadowing. You're going to see exactly what I mean very soon. So now that we've got the first 12 of the first 42, what is left? 30, right? And going quickly organization-wise, we could do 15 times 2. First 15 is broken down into 3 5s, and we can organize them as 3 2. All of them, just keeping it basic. And then the second 15 we can do as 3 5s, 2 3. So it's going to look like this, and I'm probably going to fast forward this. See, that's a 3 2, and we want to do that 3 times. 1 2 3. And now we're going to do a 2 3. 3 times. And there we go. There's a 42. And so what happens is, right, it's deja vu. This repeats, and the last is a 12. Look at that, right? It's like I know the pieces fit on easy mode, but the results are going to be absolutely ballistic. So there you go. You literally wrote the rhythm. Now, the machinery of the universe has completely taken over, right? A few parameters and this thing starts writing itself, right? You've got the rhythmic parameter. You've also got the key parameter, which is going to be in the key of E. And another level that I bring into this, my students and I talk about it all the time. JD, Jake, Sean, Khalil, and Kosei, Ashley. You guys, this is exactly what we're talking about. This is that whole idea where you can use the Midi sequencer to literally program yourself to play stuff way beyond what you would otherwise be able to conceive without having the Midi. So that goes back to what I was saying a minute ago, where depending on how you're actually executing these riffs on the guitar, the groupings can change in terms of, like, for example, imagine just playing like 5 downstrokes on adjacent strings, right? Just playing 5 strings in a row like that. Are you grouping that in 3 or 2s? No, straight up 5. We call that floating right through, where you're literally just playing each subdivision exactly evenly and you're not articulating them in terms of a 3-2 or a 2-3. You're just floating that, right? So on the guitar, that happens all the time, where you might play a 5 by just going like da-ka-da-ka-da, right? It's like completely even, like monotone, because I'm just letting my pick fall through the strings. You're gonna see what I mean, dude. All right, so what I've done is I put a backbeat to this because we're going to get a little bit more perspective when we just hear that rhythm that we just made up with that Tihai framework against the backbeat. So listen up, kid, right? okay, like I didn't even need to get to the end of that because now it's starting to get like, oh, it's getting a little nebulous later. But I was keeping track of those patterns, right? Up until that 5th bar, I was like, yo, okay, I totally feel that against the backbeat. Like I can feel that rhythm is just like a backbeat caveman rave rhythm. That's that. It's literally that, but just juggling up those 3s and 2s, classic. So it's like, okay, we know that we want to talk about some harmony. Finally, we got to the harmony section of the video. But here's the thing is, this thing is literally going to write itself, right? It's all about the setup, and then it's just like, done! All right, so how does it write itself? Well, there's a few things, right? Think about a few more parameters. Get it as many parameters you can think of, let's throw them in. One parameter will be the open strings of the guitar neck. Let's aim for those, generally speaking, when possible. So that's going to be really helpful in guiding the whole operation. The other level will be, we want to do key changes. So let's think about doing it that way, right? Now there is a duality here, right? There is just the like droning over the 1 approach and just playing different intervals against the 1, right? That's like classic Tool Meshuggah, but that's why it's so logical to be like, wait, let's just bring like a deeper sense of harmony to that same thing that those guys are doing. And that's exactly what this is. That's exactly what we're about to accomplish. So you see those 2 parameters, boom, you've got, I'm going to focus on making actual chord changes, and I'm going to focus on using the open strings. I've already got my rhythm written for me. It's like, what else is there? Just start hacking away. You got the first 7 on an E. Look what I can do. I can just take these 2 2s and turn them into 1s. And do this. And you're going to see why I'm doing this. I'm doing this on purpose. I can just play. Look at this. I can just play this chord voicing. You see what's going on here? Look at this. Listen to that chord voicing. Right? You know what it is, right? That's where the fretboard logic comes in. So keep going with this, right? I got a 3 here. Keep it so painfully basic that it hurts. It's like, do I want to set up the chord change already? It's like, that's actually probably a little too soon. Let's let the whole 7 play out and then do a chord change on the next 5. That's one of those other pro tips is like, doing chord changes over 7s and 5s is like always sick. Also doing like consecutive 3s. You're gonna see, dude, this riff's gonna be totally intergalactic. So see what I mean by the 3 here? Like I'm just you know what I mean? Like smoke on the water, like literally, like listen to that. Okay, I'm gonna do the trick with the 5 where I float the 5. Because on that 7, I floated the 4. Now the float, remember the term float. The float means I'm just evenly playing the notes of the grouping of 7 or 5. I'm not accenting a 3 or a 2 in that, right? So look at the 7 one where I do a 4 and a 3. So I am breaking it into a 4 and a 3, but I didn't break the 4 into 2 2s. It's just 1 4 like that. Float it. Float, right? It floats. So I can float the whole 5, right? You dude! And I'm just like doing local fretboard geometry, but I am thinking of a chord change here, and I'm thinking, I'm like back cycling the flat 6 chord. And I've literally made extensive videos on the flat 6 chord. But that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get to the flat 6 chord. You see what I mean? The only thing that matters about the flat 6 is just like a far way to go, and there's going to be a few different ways we can like traverse our way over there, and they're all going to sound sick as a byproduct of just focusing on getting to the key of C, right? Tonicizing a new key, basic compositional logic. So now we have this term backcycling, so we can backcycle the key of C. So how could we do that if we're on the key of E? How can we like backcycle in some kind of interesting way? Let the guitar write it for us. So I'm doing this D major over F sharp chord, and I'm going to float it as a 5. You'll see exactly what I mean, like this, right? So I got 1 on F sharp, that's beat 1, first subdivision on F sharp, second subdivision on D, third subdivision on A. Do you see what's going on here? I'm literally just doing the open strings of the guitar. That's a huge level. Look at this. I'm floating it. You see why that's going to be a float? Just listen. Right? But honestly, this is part of it, right? Think about what the guitar does, right? I need to do this to actually hear the point here, because you're not hearing my complete imagination. Obviously, you think about like the guitar and the open strings, they ring out when you do this kind of thing, right? So that's really what it's going to sound like. it writes itself. So remember, that was for the purpose of back cycling the key of C. You see how it's already setting it up, the key of C, because D major over F sharp is just going to take us to G. And you know where G is going to take us? To C. Cycle of fourths basics. Now, the question is, are we already trying to move to C that quickly, or do we want to pace it a little more? And honestly, I'm thinking of something. I'm going to listen to that one more time to see if I get triggered with what I need to hear. Yep, so what I hear is this 3 right here, that's cut in half. See what's going on there? So what I'm going to do for this 5, now that I've actually broken it down into 3 components, I'm going to have 3 different chords play in that short period of time. That's what I was hearing in my ears, right? The universe is taking over. It's telling me I have the ears to listen. So I literally probably hear is just, it's going E. It's the same chords as before, but now you're riffing those chords like this. See what that is, right? So I play an E5 power chord, and that voice leads to a D major and first inversion power chord. We're seeing F sharp in D, right? You see where that is on the fretboard. That sets up this G movement. And what's great is in that little rhythm there, that super short period of time, you can get those 2 harmonic points across using voice leading in rock riffing, like absolute crushing dynamite. And so right here, we have that 2, and that's just gonna be a G of some kind. So see how that F sharp is gonna go to a G right here? So I am gonna fret that B. You see what G chord I'm playing? I'm playing the classic G chord right here. This is gonna be a quick strum. You know the old quick strum? See what chord that is? That's one of the best voicings on the entire guitar, but everyone's afraid to use it because they're afraid it's like too church or something, but church is sick, right? So let's hear that so far. It's probably gonna be freaking off the chain. And so now that sets up the key of C. So then the question becomes like, how are we gonna do that C? To me, the answer is already obvious because it's the perfect opportunity to float it and just strum those open strings like this. 1, like I'm literally just playing the classic church C chord, campfire chord, but watch how absolute off the charts dynamite it's gonna sound. Like literally that's C9, right? So that's gonna have a C, E, G on the 3rd subdivision. It's gonna have D, that's the 9th on the 4th subdivision, and it's gonna have the open E string, and that's a beautiful interval. And let's just hear that first progression and then actually harmonically analyze it. All right, let's analyze it. It's the 1 chord, right? The 1 chord is happening over the entire first component of 7. You know where we got 7 from, way back earlier in the video. You know where 7 came from. And so it's like just keeping that 7 1 harmonic moment, and then the next component, which is a 5, make that another harmonic component, and then just break that rule of the 3 and the 2 rule. You're not even breaking the rule, you're just doing what we call the float. You're not articulating any of those subdivisions in such a way that they're organized. It's just a straight 5. You can do that. Drummers do this all the time. It's classic. Very easy for me to float a rhythm if I just let my pick fall through the strings on the chord voicing. And why did I pick that chord voicing in the first place? That's D over F sharp. Well, I was back cycling the key of C. I knew going to the key of C, going with a flat 6 key relative to E would be a cool destination, right? So then I just back cycle it by going E, set up that dope D over F sharp voicing. That's just classic on the guitar, open string floating techniques. And then almost like a stutter step right here, like a stutter step where you go back to E and then go up to D over F sharp again, right, with that like cool power chord thing. This is like dead, and then open it up on that big open string G, the classic G chord, to then literally go to the open string classic C chord, right? Back cycling a key target, like, dude, oh my god, dude!
Watch the sky crystallize.
I just realized this thing is about to pop off like nobody's freaking business, kid. Because we're about to enter 5 land. I don't know if you saw that for yourself, but we are entering 5 land. Look how many 5s we're about to go through. And I don't need to really worry about exactly how many. There's probably like 6 or something like that. Yeah, it's 6 because it's 2 30s, right? And each of those are divided into 3 5s we got 6 5s. So welcome to 5 land, right? And it started here. That's a 5. And we divided that 5 into 3 components because we did the 3 in half, right? The good old dotted. You hear it all day. All day, all day. And then here we go with another 5. So I think we have like 4 5s ahead of us, something like that. So now it's like, okay, what that means is we know that that is going to be a new chord change, right? And then it's like, what's the chord change? Well, that's going to be based on some target that I established. And the target's already made itself apparent because it's gonna be A minor. You know why? Because it's kind of the same as C major, but also it's the 4 minor chord, which sets up a big resolution back to the 1 chord, right? You see how the C major doesn't really set up a resolution back to the 1 chord? So it's like, how are we gonna get back to the 1 chord? Via the 4 minor chord. So you see, I'm ultimately back cycling E minor via A minor. So then the question is, where can we go from this C major? Now, one of the obvious movements would just be to move down a half step to some kind of B major. And because this is rock, I'm gonna stick to triad add 9 type sounds or straight triad type sounds. But watch how it's gonna sound like, whoa, that C major is gonna go to a B major over D sharp. And the reason why is because it's just a classic deviation. You're still essentially following the cycle of fourths. If you really want to get seriously technical, you're thinking of that C chord as a tritone substitution for an F sharp chord, and that's how you get to B, right? But you can just literally go C to B, C major triad to B major triad. Sounds dope, but you can get it to be doper by inverting the B major chord, disguising it. And so that's just informing this next decision. And obviously the harmonic rhythm has got my back. So like I said, B major over D sharp. First inversion B major for this 5. We've talked about this. This is honestly expanded Adam Jones technique. Remember the Adam Jones video? This is that, just taking it to a farther level. And now you're going to hear that crystal clear. That's going to be a beautiful transition, completely afforded by the guitar. Now remember, we're trying to get to A minor. That's the key we're trying to get to. So we need to ask ourselves, when are we going to get to it? So the first thing I'm thinking is that the A minor is going to hit somewhere around that halfway point, right? It could be later. It could be even potentially earlier. One thing we do see right away is, look what happens on the downbeat of the halfway point in the form. Look what happens. The rhythm does not hit it. So that means we're going to have an anticipation or a delay if we choose to hit the A minor near the halfway point. And honestly, I think I might just approximate, have the old moving target. Maybe that's where we're going to take the exit ram and hit that A minor. And another level would be, maybe that's where I actually want to hit E minor again, right? Because remember I said that A minor is the perfect setup for E minor. So maybe I want to hit E minor at the halfway point. So like literally the point here is that I don't really need to know what the answer is yet, but I am still just thinking about back cycling A minor. So that's why I'm not going to go to E major right now. So I'm going to use voice leading crossed with open string mastery. And this one's going to cut all the way deep for you because I saw this coming 1,000 miles away. The next chord is going to be a D major chord. Now, you're already starting to make sense of that, right? The voice leading makes complete logical sense. Obviously, the D sharp is going to go down to a D. So these notes we don't need those notes, you know what I'm saying? Now, the F sharp, it could stay the same, but the thing is I'm going to use the F sharp later, so I'm going to actually go up to that note, the 5th. So I'm doing the classic voicing right now. I'm going 1, 5, and now this one's where it's going to cut super violently deep. Then it's going to go to 4. Why would it do that? Think about it. Ding, ding, ding. You figured it out. Because it's the open G string, kid! Interwoven cosmic principles. 3 layers deep minimum. So now if you picture what's going on in the fretboard here, you obviously know what the next note is. That's where we wanted to use that F sharp. And if you're still following the logic, you're like, is he that egregious? And the answer is, of course I am. That's how this works. you should be as egregious as possible when it comes to open strings. And the proof is going to be in the pudding on that one. Welcome to Five Land. Now, the key understanding about this chord here, right, is that I can float it, right? I can just down pick through those adjacent strings. But look at the interval combinations. Look what's happening, right? First subdivision, second subdivision, and then the pitch is descending by a whole step for the third subdivision because A is going down to G. But you see how I'm picking through adjacent strings? Deeply woven. And this is why the guitar is such a beautiful instrument. These are the things you want to take advantage of as a guitarist. Things that are completely unique to the guitar. It's the same logic as why campfire chords are actually really good when used properly. It's literally just all about taking advantage of open strings. That's all it comes down to. But now you're kind of understanding like what rock harmony starts to look like, right? It's like, yeah, it's the same theory as jazz, but how do you explain that chord voicing in the context of like jazz or classical? You don't. You explain it in the context of rock and how rock is a guitar-based music genre. That's how you explain it. A whole other set of rules emerge here. Now, just to make it a little easier to reverse engineer the target, I am gonna actually move this note here just to be on A. Because like I said a minute ago, right, that's the halfway point where that marker is right now. That's the halfway point of the tune, right? And we see that the rhythmic framework we use, it's not hitting on that downbeat of the halfway point. It's hitting right after, so it sets up a delayed resolution. So I'm going to say that the A minor that we're targeting is probably happening just slightly after the halfway point. And maybe I'll change that in a second, but the point is I'm just trying to give myself a clear point in time at which I'm going to be hitting that A. Maybe I'll adjust it slightly, but it's approximately going to be there. It's either going to be there or it's going to be here. Like literally it's going to be one of those two places, and we'll find out which one it is in a second. But for now, I can just see what makes sense if I'm kind of like reverse engineering that target. Like what comes before A minor, probably an E of some kind, possibly an E over a G sharp, right? You see what I'm saying? Like, let's just maybe, right? And then it's like, well, what could come before an E over a G sharp? Well, one thing to consider is what the rhythm is right here. Look, you got those two twos, right? Because this is a 7 altogether right here, right? It's the end of our 5 land. These are the last two 5s in 5 land. Now we're hitting that 7. So it's like we could do two chords here to set up that E over G sharp, which I'm pretty sure that's definitely what it's going to be. It's like, how do we get there? Well, voice leading, as we've already realized, often will take precedent over cycle of force. And that's kind of one of the nuances of like rock harmony. Like look for like voice leading in your riffing and then watch what happens. Like I'm basically speaking to myself at this point because I'm thinking like some kind of G power chord, right, could set up an E over a G sharp, right? And then what could happen before a G power chord? Well, you know, maybe a D over F sharp. Problem is, I already used a lot of D over F sharp. You know what note I haven't used yet in this whole riff? F freaking natural, dude. How do you explain F natural right now? You explain it because it's the alternative to D over F sharp, right? It's like, how do I get to G? I can get there a few different ways. I can get there from D over F sharp, or I can maybe just get there from F, 5, power chord, because rock music. Literally. And the thing is that F is going to sound like super rich because, you know, we haven't used that note before and it's literally the flat second degree of the key that we're in. It's a great moment. It's going to be a very strong harmonic sound right there. Okay, so with that in mind, let's actually go ahead and just deal with this. And if we just deal with this section, then the answer to this section is probably going to be revealed. But the thing is, I already know that this is right. That's our A minor. We already know what this is going to be. We're going to use a classic open string float situation, and you know what that is. Picture your open A minor chord options. If I'm just going to divide this subdivision 5 ways with just an open string floating, like basic, let the guitar tell me what the riff is, you already can probably figure out exactly what I'm going to do. You could probably predict it. I dare you to pause the video and predict what I'm going to do right now because it's freaking obvious. And then I have to fret the flatted third, right? And you see what's going on. And then the next note becomes, you see that? You see how that makes total logical sense in the guitar? I'm floating adjacent strings, but the intervals are not necessarily ascending, because you can see that I'm hitting the C before I'm hitting the B, because the C is on the G string before the open B string, right? And then what's the next obvious open string? It's a freaking E string, right? And then you hear that. It's just too obvious. So then right before that, we've got this 3, and it's E over G sharp. So once again, we already know all the answers. We're going to have G sharp, we're going to have E, and we're going to have B, and hear that. Right? It's coming together, and then what are we doing here? 2 freaking power chords, just straight up rock music power chords. So look at this. This is dope right here. Yup! That's machinery of the universe taking over, son. So now what becomes obvious to me is that this part of the riff should somehow contrast, this part of the riff and also all of this part of the riff, which is very like, open chording, big chords, right? And we have a little bit of riffing here, right? Those 2 power chords, that's like some rock riffing, we do have a little bit of rock riffing here. You know what I mean by rock riffing, like power chord type playing, right? So here, should we do some rock riffing? And I think we should. Now, one thing that's obvious though here with this connection here, right? This transition is this is actually a kind of a dissonant chord in some ways. In some ways, it's so perfectly consonant that it's like inverting the whole paradigm of consonance and dissonance. Like literally that chord's insane. Just listen to that again. It's pretty ridiculous, but so apparent. So to me, it just sets up a few levels of contrast. One is simplicity. So that means like kind of expanding on the riffing element, which I think currently our riffing element is somewhat underused. You know what I'm saying? Because of all these big chord strumming situations. So I see like, just do something hilariously simple, right? Because we just kind of like peaked out on complexity. That for sure right there is a high, that's a high peak. So you got to go back and chill. See, when it comes time to chill, we're talking about doing stuff like this. Like just old school, basic, intuitive riffing, no thoughts really going into that. Other than, if I want to get technical about it, D is kind of setting up a G, but also I want to go back to like E minor, and then G major and E minor are the same thing, but it just goes back to basic open string logic, right? There's not a lot of theory logic here. This is just a perfect contrast in every way, and there's certainly no problems from going from this chord to this chord. There's obviously nothing wrong with that. And then beyond that, I literally am not overthinking it. So it's like, do-do-do-do-do. That's what I mean. Like here. Basic, classic fundamentals as a natural byproduct of trying to facilitate contrast. So then it's like, what happens? I think the main thing that's underused in this whole piece so far is still just basic rock riffing. That's the one thing we don't have enough of. So let's just get more of that. So every time I think about like basic rock melody riffing, I pretty much always just think of 1 flat 3 4. So that's what I'm thinking about here. I'm thinking about going flat 3, and then this time I'll go to 4, right? So it's like a little stutter step, you know what I'm saying? And then you actually hit a real flat 3, and we'll do that as a power chord. You know what I mean? Because it's only 2. You know what? No, we'll play the 2 like that, right? You know what I'm saying? That kind of thing. That's a classic thing. Like hear all this, right? Right? Like hear that? To play that subdivision, right? Do that. But you get to let the bottom note ring out, right? So classic. So then it's just like, okay, what notes can I add to make this 3 sound articulate? Do I want to do a power chord like I did here? Or like I'm doing here? Or do I want to do something a little bit different? I'm going to kind of refer back to this sound is what I'm going to do, because that's an A. So I'm going to go back to some kind of like D over A kind of thing. And then to refer back to that, the characteristic thing is the G against the F sharp. So that's what I'll put. I'll put A on the first subdivision. And then I'm going to hit F sharp on the second subdivision. And then on the final subdivision, I'm going to hit G. Check just that little bit out. Okay, dude. It was all revealed to me right there, right? I just heard everything. Pump it, dude. Just pump it. You're back into 5 land over here, dude. And the time we're going to exit, this is what's crazy, is I'm pretty sure what we're going to do in that last measure, Special Accent Tihai Framework, You have to go to school and do a lot of research to understand why this is too basic and obvious. Anyone who knows anything already knows, right? Obviously, that's the whole point right there. That's why that's the special accent. That's the talisman secret code. So look, if we like this pumping stuff, what happens here? Like, there, we got to play open 5 floater. And here's the thing, is back to the idea, 4 minor just took us straight back to E. And there we go, dude. We are back to the original key center in a weird sort of spot where it's literally halfway through the 5th measure of the tune. Interesting asymmetrical phrasing, but like asymmetry is like obviously first level of like getting beyond the basics. Like, of course, you got to like learn about your asymmetries. And that's a really, really good example, really simple example of a basic asymmetry. So this whole thing is going to set up its own universe. It's 5 land, right? So 5 land on this cycle of 42 is different than 5 land on the first cycle of 42. Now that does not always happen. Check out the last Tihai riff I wrote. That's in the school. That's entangling. Check out that Tihai riff. Literally have the first cycle and the second cycle being identical. In this case, the only thing that's identical is the rhythm. It's 5 land. You got 5 land. But we heard that pump. We heard that resolution on E minor, and just pumping it just sounded so right to me. But then we heard that open string float it, where it's literally like bop, boom, bop, bop, boom, boo, ba, boo, ba, da, bop, bop, da. See right here. Dop, doppa, da. It switches. We don't even have to make that decision. That's going to sound messed up like square tire washer machine. But all we hear for now is we hear 5, 5, and then this 5 is a floater. And you literally don't even have any choices about what notes you're going to play. There's not actual choices to be made here. You're just going to play 5 subdivisions, and you're going to play the only 5 subdivisions that you can play, which are literally these. That's all you get for choices. You're seeing them. Look, see what I mean? Listen to that. It's the only choice. That's the takeaway. Classic E minor 9 where the F sharp is against the G, but it's the open G string, and then you also hit the open B string, and then you also hit the low open E string. So it's flawless. You couldn't make a better argument for any other possible situation. All right, so watch it pump into that next bit. And you hear it. It's literally like a call and response situation. It's literally that again. But because that 5 is displaced over here, right? Because this one literally starts 4 subdivisions after the downbeat, right? 1, 2, 3, 4 subdivisions after the downbeat, versus this one starts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 subdivisions after the downbeat. So it's like, I don't even want to change that voicing because the rhythm as a displacement there is getting the job done in terms of the variation required. This is going to be sick. So for that reason, I'm not even going to change the voicing there because, like I said, it's like pretty much my only choice anyway, unless I literally wanted to actually change chords there, which I don't. So let's just hear that. Interesting. Yeah, that's not it. That's not it. So look at this. Kind of being consistent with this whole idea, where in the second cycle, we're doing 5 land differently than we did in the first cycle. Well, in the special accent, I don't think it's going to be another E minor chord because that's E minor right there. So I just heard some kind of variation. And I guess what's occurring to me is just to go up to a G and just float out a big G chord. That seems to be the obvious thing. Because I'm thinking about like what happens here. If this stays the same, which I think it probably might, like stay the same as it was over here, right? Yeah. Then it's like the only alternative to the E minor that would have otherwise been there would just literally be G major. And that's really all the thought that is going to have to go into that for me. And I'm going to play that as a G5 because I only have 4 subdivisions here, right? That's a 7, right? Remember this? We got 4 plus 3. So it's a 7. But going back to the special accent built into the Tihai. So you're going to have 1, 5, 1, and then you just need 1 more. It's obviously 5. So that's like a G5 campfire power chord, right? Classic. And that, let's hear this right here. devastating, but I hear it. You hear it too. Maybe. I don't know if you hear that actually. Did you hear this? Check that out. Listen out one more time. You hear that? And I definitely want to actually do that over here, obviously. That's too, you know what I'm saying? Right? We didn't think of that over here before, but for sure, we're doing that. That makes too much obvious sense. Now, let's just hear that one more time here at the end. Yeah, I knew it. You could do one level deeper. You could do this. You could do that. Look at that. Look at that. You see what that is? Because open strings, that's going to be like hybrid picking. Like, I'm going to pick that F sharp. I'm going to pick that F sharp. I'm going to grab that A natural, and then I'm going to pick that D. You see that, dude? That's what I'm going to do for that riff. Listen to that one. That one, dude. That's it. That's the whole thing. Let's hear it. No, it's missing something, dude. It's missing a melody that moves in the opposite direction. You're going to hear it. I think you might already hear it yourself. It's Machinery of the Universe, dude. We all hear it. I think that's it. Let's hear it. Exactly. So let's hear that. Dynamite! And really, that's all there is to it. It's absolute dynamite! So yeah, it's classic, dude. Feels like we're full circling. It's back to the school, obviously, right? If you want to hear the track. You know, the good old classroom. Remember the classroom? Don't forget the classroom. We've got all those rhythmic frameworks. I'm going to put that rhythmic framework as a lesson in the classroom. I'll do a live call on it if somebody wants. I usually just do the live calls that people want. You know, we got the Coltrane live calls. We've got the all kinds, dude. These courses are just getting out of control, dude. Like, ask anyone in the freaking program and you'll know what I'm talking about. Like, I can safely say that this is the best jazz curriculum on the internet. I can safely say that. And I really think that's just because we're the only people tackling it. So I think that's the main reason. I'm sure more comprehensive jazz curriculums will turn up, but generally speaking, this one for sure right now at the absolute cutting edge. Seriously, ask anyone. Comment below, guys. Seriously, I need you to comment below if you've had your life changed in the school, please. I'm having so much fun doing these lessons, dude. I mean, this is just like, it's just the systematic alchemical process of unlocking comprehensive musical fluency. And a lot of people are completing this course in like 2 months-ish, usually, right? And so that whole roadmap is, you know, chord construction first. That's the first place you're going to have to start, right? Look how easy this stuff is. This stuff is nothing, right? You can blaze through this all the way to intro to fat shapes. Chord construction finishes with intro to fat shapes. So then the next course is fat shapes, dude. There's a whole, dude, this one just goes ballistic, kid. Out of control in terms of just the awareness being unleashed. Because the fat shapes is a theory integration system. It shows you how to integrate music theory into music performance. So if you're teaching on that level, that's different than people who are teaching on just a level of, oh, now you know all music theory. Dude, everyone knows all music theory. A lot less people know how to wield music theory. So our rhythmic frameworks, our fat shape framework, among other, the Tihai framework, Meshuggah framework, all the frameworks are musical integration frameworks. They integrate theory into performance. You need a reference point for the vernacular of applied music theory. Fat Shapes is the first example of what that is. And plus, you know, you got all these other courses, and then you want to, we literally got the Coltrane course. Don't forget about the Coltrane course, obviously. You obviously have the Coltrane. Everyone loves the Coltrane course. Look how much people love it. It's so mind-freaking-blowing. And that's why we always talk about triads, man. But that all goes under chord construction. We do have a really good course on triads, which is actually in the Fat Shapes course, inversion theory. Inversion Theory 1. That's based on triads. This is about triads. In jazz, triads provide 80% of the material required to improvise masterful solos. So you need to completely understand triadic interchange, triadic inversion, triadic voice leading before you can get to fat shapes. So Inversion Theory 1 sets the stage for, like, you know, understanding third inversion, fourth inversion, fifth inversion, dude. Literally, JD, we were talking about that. It's monstrous, man. Absolutely freaking monstrous. You can still get it on the ground floor. I know, the price is eye-watering. It's hilarious, but dude, it has to be that way. If you think about it in terms of, like, you can complete the curriculum in like 2 months or less, maybe if you're a psycho genius, 1 month. Actually, you don't need to be a psycho genius to do it in 1 month. You can be like just a normal person and get it done in 1 month if you have seriously intense motivation. Anyone who has seriously intense motivation would take advantage of this and realize this is the actual keys to the kingdom, and you're very early in the cycle in terms of how big Systems for Creation is going to get. So get it on the ground floor. You can hit me up on Instagram, but also I'm going to link my new email address, dude. I got a new email address, dude. So check out my new email address in the description, dude. And I will see you in the next video.